Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lodestore's Lending Leaders. This week, I'm joined by Chuck Cain. He is the SVP of the National Agency Division at FNF Family of Companies. And he also hosts his own podcast, the FNF Unplugged podcast. Welcome to Lodestore's Lending Leaders, Chuck.
Thank you so much, Elena. Pleasure to be here and pleasure to be here with your audience.
Awesome. So we always like to start when we have another guest on that has a podcast. Tell us about how you got into podcasting and what your experience has been with it so far, what you love about it, any things that you don't love about it, and really your experience.
Well, I've been involved in podcasting now, I guess it's been over 2 years. And, and we've been very successful at FNF Unplugged with our podcast. We're well over 15,000 opens and listens. We have an international audience, people in India, people in Europe, routinely listen to our podcast. And so we've been very happy with it. I think that, podcasting, what I like about podcasts is that people can listen to a podcast in their car. They can listen to it at any time. If you're sort of stuck in front of the video screen to hear something, well, you're stuck in front of the video screen, and that could be your phone. In which case, don't worry, you will lose your eyesight at a very young age. But unless you have a huge phone, but you're sitting in front of your laptop or your book or whatever it is on which you watch these things, and you're kind of stuck in a spot. Podcasting, that gives you that option. You can listen to it, you can start it, you can stop it in case you get caught in the middle of something. So I think it's a great format. I think also too that and one thing which we've been complimented on is you can keep things crisp and current. We turn our podcasts from the time they're recorded till the time they're posted. We can turn them in as short a time as 36 hours. And that includes compliance review and all the things that any company needs to do. So I think that's really critical, and that's something that podcasting gives you the ability to do. You can deliver a presentation on a hot topic while the topic is hot. You can also build out a library of things that are useful at any time. How to build your social media. There's certain things, and we see people come back and listen to some of our podcasts repeatedly when we've got somebody who's an expert in regard to something which is a day-to-day event, or they'll play it for other people in their office who say, well, I heard this, and they're like, oh, you're all wet, you have no idea what you're talking about. Well, listen to this guy. And and we also sort of build it out that at FNF, because we're the largest title insurance underwriter in the country, and we've got the biggest agency network, that it's for our agents. I mean, that's the focus, but it does spill over into other areas of realty and lending in the entire industry. And as to our guests, we sort of rotate them through. We have people who are best in class in what they do to talk about hot topics. We also have a lot of our gifted FNF personnel. Mike Nolan, the president of FNF of Fidelity, did a presentation and a podcast that was highly listened to by our agents. And then we have our agents on, and the agents talk about what they're doing. And and sometimes I think, and we've seen some of those podcasts be the most listened to, because if you're a title agent and you think, well, this guy's a title agent, maybe he's got something to say, maybe he's got an idea that I haven't thought of, or an implementation that I haven't thought of or have not been able to accomplish. So we get and we sort of rotate that. So again, it stays pretty fresh. So I like it. I've for years, people always in our industry, in the title industry, want to send out newsletters. I personally, and it's only a personal opinion, this does not represent the position of FNF or anybody else who works at FNF. I hate newsletters. And the reason I hate newsletters is not because they're a bad idea, but because just the reason I outlined for podcasts, you send out a newsletter, you have to send it out routinely. You have to send it out on weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is. Well, some weeks there's a lot to talk about, and other weeks not so much. And so so you've got this newsletter where suddenly you're putting in brownie recipes and things to pad it out because you really don't have the content. With podcasting, you can deliver that content crisply, quickly, and if there's two or three things to talk about in a week, you can do 2 or 3 podcasts. If there's hot topics, you can get them out there real fast. We do. And I think one of the challenges quite often with any content marketing is you got to do it. You got to do it repeatedly, and you got to do it routinely. One thing which again we've heard from our listeners, it's like, well, pretty much every week or 10 days, there's another podcast on a good topic. You have to do that. You have to be out there routinely. If you skip 2 months, people forget about it, and they've moved on to something else. We live in a society with a shortened attention span, and as one of the people who did one of our podcasts, and is a friend of Brian Rieger's, he's a leading mortgage banker out of Atlanta, and he talked about his social media campaigns, and he said, the problem with when I send out something in social media, I'm not just competing with the other mortgage lenders in my marketplace. I'm competing with like a groundhog eating pizza. I'm competing with everything that takes people's time when they are going through, they're on their laptop, or they're going through their iPad or their book, as to all the other competition. And so podcasts, I think, give you the ability to sort of narrowly focus that. And so your target audience, and again, we send it out to all our FNF agents. Whenever there's a new podcast posted, we've got the library, they can go back into it. It's been very successful. I'm very happy with it. But I think that the challenge for any content marketing is that you have to have good, solid, crisp, current content, and you got to do it all the time.
Yes.
It's not a matter, again, of doing it quarterly, because again, you'll lose people. They'll forget about you.
Yeah, it's definitely, consistency is key when it comes to content, and it definitely showcases. It's one of the biggest challenges, I think, as a marketing professional, is just coming out with consistent content and making sure your brand stays relevant in the sphere you need to be, because you are shouting into the void when online. Because like you said, Pizza Rat was a thing in New York, and you're competing with Pizza Rat. So are you better than that? And of course, you have people that, won't give Pizza Rat the time of day and would much rather watch, your podcast, but you've also got the reverse as well. Now, you've been in the industry for quite a while, or so I'm told. You've run title agencies, built affiliated arrangements, been in executive positions with, larger underwriters and all of that. What is the single biggest change you've seen in the mortgage real estate title industry since you started?
Well, since I started, because at that point in time, most legal documents were chiseled onto stone tablets. So then we moved on to papyrus and vellum and things like that. But seriously, again, I've been in the industry now over 40 years, and the obvious and very single minded answer is technology. We still sort of do things the same way as far as title and settlement, insofar as what is our role in the transaction. Now that's expanded, that's changed. There are some additional changes there, but it used to be everything was typed like on selectric typewriters. And I remember when memory typewriters came out, where you could program 6 or 8 items into the typewriter, so you didn't have to type the address de novo over and over again and possibly make a mistake, because a mortgage note has to be a perfect document. If there's a mistake, you don't get to white it out. And so and we had, I remember when, fax machines, or as they were first called, thermofax machines, came into being, and it saved a lot of gasoline. So as people didn't have to drive things around all over sort of hell's half acre to get documents signed, you could get faxed documents. But when those faxed documents came out, you generally had to make a copy of it right away, because the faxes would fade over time. And so you had to, sort of run to the copy machine to do that. So, I think, obviously, computers, where we've gone. And when I started again in the industry, things didn't change quite as dramatically technologically, other than what I've just outlined, until we get to the end of the 90s. And you get into email, and we get into routine electronic production of documents. And whether they remain electronic or they get printed out into paper, that we saw a complete sea change there as far as how that works. So, and of course now the technology is so much more advanced, and as we work towards integrations with particularly with mortgage lenders from the title and settlement industry, that I think we're going to see more and more technological changes as they come forward. I think also too, I know you asked me, what's the biggest change, and again, that's for anybody who's been in the industry as long as I have. That's the big change. But affiliated business arrangements, which I've been involved in since the mid '90s, when and that's about when they really started to advent, was in the mid 1990s, and since then we see affiliated business become a major component, particularly in the residential area of title and settlement and title insurance here in Ohio, where I'm based off of cobbling together numbers, because there is no single place to go to and say, well, okay, affiliated business represents X percentage of the residential closings in the state. But for probably the last 6 to 7 years, somewhere at least 35 to 40% of all residential transactions that close in Ohio, which is a pretty good sized state, close through affiliated business arrangements. And those really didn't exist in the early 1990s. And now we see ABAs where the ABA, as particularly in regard to realty, the ABAs are really the source of the income. In fact, I was at the Inman Connect show in Las Vegas, and there was a discussion about how one real estate brokerage in Arizona, that if you utilize their title and lending arms, that they would charge you no commission. Now, that's a dramatic change. But that's where they make the money. That's where the broker makes the money. And so I think that, that has certainly been a significant change, as well as to how lending is done. When I started, title insurance for residential transactions was pretty much only for FHA and VA loans. Conventional loans didn't take title insurance. You should took attorneys' opinions. And as an attorney, I can tell you what those opinions are worth, especially a year after you issue them. But we saw, a big change. The FHA and VA market back in the 1980s was principally done through mortgage companies that worked nationally. The commercial banks weren't really that involved in mortgage lending back in the 1980s. Thrifts, savings and loans, as they were known, that was the dominant source of business in most areas of the country for conventional lending. And in the Cincinnati area, I think we topped out at about 160 savings and loans in the Cincinnati metro in the 1980s. So they controlled all the business as far as the conventional lending, but they really didn't take title insurance very often. That's all changed. Title insurance is now due diligence for virtually any residential transaction. There are some out there that may not require it, but by and large, there has been that sea change as far as the commercial banks and the mortgage companies owned by commercial banks, such as Wells Fargo and Chase and people like that, becoming very strong and large national players in regard to residential lending.
Yeah. No, I definitely see, the industry is definitely growing. We see more and more different business types all the time. It feels like a new type of bank. I learn about a new one every day. It feels like sometimes. And then, as someone who's been in the industry for a while, what would you say to a young title agent that's just starting out, that's looking to, grow their business, grow their network? What tips and tricks would you give them?
Well, I think that, if somebody were just starting out opening a title agency, first of all, figure out what is it you want to do, because title agencies, I've worked in boutique title agencies where you had really 3 or 4 main customers. And then large title agencies where you had numerous customers and you were doing thousands of transactions. And so you would look to do, you build your business around what is your customer base. So I think that that's something that anybody who is interested in the business now, that's what they need to do. They need to decide how to do it. And again, it's technology driven. Everything you can do to build yourself out technologically, as to social media as well. You have to do it absolutely because that's where the business is going.
And to swing back towards social media, it's always hard to give advice to borrowers or to make connections online because, of course, we always have the compliance angle coming into it, right? But what advice would you give for a title or a mortgage professional that are looking to get more into either podcast marketing, social media, just overall make their presence more known, specifically to the consumer or to whoever their target audience is?
Well, I think that, I think we are entering an age for title and settlement to really do marketing to consumers. We've talked about it the entire time I've been in the industry, never good at it. We're a B2B industry, and in part because most people don't know exactly what we do. In fact, many of our customers don't really know what we do. And some of us don't really know what we're doing either. But I think that, there is that opportunity now to reach out. And I think, with the Biden administration, fair lending and fair housing is a huge initiative in the Biden administration and by all aspects through the various bureaus, through HUD, obviously the MBA with their convergence program. And I think that's an opportunity to, be engaged in things like the convergence program and the convergence toolkit, which if you're an MBA member, you can get into. But consumers, and we've seen this, nobody goes to a restaurant anymore. I don't go to a restaurant anymore until I look on site, even if I've been to the restaurant. I look on site as to reviews and comments. And if it's a restaurant I've never been to, I do that. So it's like, well, what do people seem to like? Or what do they say? My God, don't order this. And I think that's something too, where you can build out your consumer base. If you're involved, particularly in fair lending and fair housing initiatives, if you're working with various groups to get people into houses in your community, advertise that, make a point of it, because consumers care about that. Yeah. And then if you can get some reviews posted, it's like, well, first time I ever bought a house, modest home. I mean, here, between the mountains, you still buy houses for, under 6 figures. And it's like, the people, they helped me, they explained things, they were, great. That sort of a review is going to be viewed by consumers who are going to tell their real estate agent or broker, tell their lender, hey, I'd like to work with this title agency, because they seem to know what they're doing and they seem to care, because I was online taking a look at title agencies in the area. And by the way, the one you mentioned, I don't see anything on their website that leads me in that direction. So I think, building that out, I think is going to be critical in these upcoming years. And it's not just a political issue. I mean, when you get into things like redlining and fair housing, the Trump administration was very much involved in investigations of redlining and fair housing violations. So this is not, a Republican or Democrat or whoever's in the White House. This is where things are going. And as the MBA has pointed out, the growth in the residential marketplace, virtually all the growth between 2020 and 2040 will take place in minority communities. Yeah, it's not going to be, and it's like the census shows it quite clearly. It's like there aren't going to be as many people who look like me, and there aren't right now. But there's more and more people who are minorities in this country who are just getting into housing and helping them get into housing. I think it's a win-win for everybody. And again, I think it's something where you can really build things out in your social media and your marketing that, well, this is something that we're known for. We care about people. And that's, I think, our industry, I think, really is famous for that, is that, we put people in homes is what we do. And so, whether it's refinancing so they can afford to stay there, or it's to buy a home, whatever it is, that's what we do on the residential side of things. And the more we can stress that, I think Alta's new programs, I think, are very good. I think they've really spruced them up incredibly as to the value of title insurance and the settlement process and what do we do. So it's not this mystery of, and I can't tell you the number of times that I've been asked when I've been at the closing table, and I've sat at the closing table probably 15,000 times, where very sophisticated buyers will turn to me and it's like, now, why exactly are you here?
Yeah.
And what is it that you do? And then I explain to them, and they're like, there's like an industry for that. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a big industry. And so, I think those are all things that, moving forward here, I think there's that opportunity to reach out to consumers. And again, to your question about, someone just starting out, there's the book Blue Ocean Culture that was written a few years ago. And it's like, well, if you compete, and what in that book is described as the red ocean, and you're competing with everybody for that same niche of business, well, you're going to have a hard time of it. But there's plenty of other ocean that's blue ocean where there's no one there. And how can you distinguish yourself and differentiate yourself from everybody else? So that, yes, we are a little different. Look at our website. We explain what our culture is. We explain who our people are. We have information and content on the site for consumers so they can understand what the process is, what the concerns are of little things like wire fraud, and how to avoid this. So, yeah, I think that, as we go forward here in time, I think that's a real opportunity to reach out and establish that. And if everybody else in your marketplace is doing the same old, you're going to be in the blue ocean. They're all going to be in the red ocean fighting for the same way for the same things.
Yeah, as our CEO says quite often, the right thing to do is often the most profitable thing to do as well.
Oh, yeah.
It just makes a lot of sense. And, at the end of the day, to do the right thing in this situation is to, promote those programs and provide those services, which can be very impactful in the community. Now, since this is going to be one of our end of the year podcasts as we kind of go and wrap up 2022 or 2021 and we go into 2022, for some reason, I can't get my years right. Too many twos, I guess.
I still think it's the 1900s, so that's all right.
What do you see as the biggest thing that will impact the industry next year? And what do you think that people are expecting it to be that it won't be?
Well, I think, and we've seen it here just in the last few weeks, but it's been building. I think we are going to see a hugely dramatic shift in the nature of the real estate business and real estate industry. When I say that, I mean realty. We just saw at Properties acquire Christie's International. We're seeing more and more changes there, and that traditional realty model, and in most of our marketplaces in the United States, real estate agents and brokers are the source of business. Or the principal source of business in the residential scheme. That probably isn't going to change. But the nature of those companies has changed, and it's going to continue to change. You can't find a Redfin office to stop in and drop off bagels to. And, it's like, and they've built that into, I think the last I saw, the 5th largest real estate company in the country. So, and all the real estate agents are employees. These are very, very different models, and I think we're going to see dramatic shifts in 2022 in the realty industry. We're going to see a lot of consolidation. I think that those traditional models and how people buy houses has changed. But those traditional models are going to branch out. And, it used to be that even 8 or 10 years ago, how'd you buy a house? Well, I got in my agent's car and we drove around to 16 houses. And then we came back and put in an offer on the first one we saw. And, it's the same sort of process. Well, now there's a variety of experience for consumers. And Brad Inman has talked about that. Certainly give him the side on it, that it's like buying a stock. You can do it entirely online if you want. And that's sort of the Redfin model. It's like, well, you may never meet your real estate agent, or if you do, it's, once or twice. You're really doing it principally yourself, or there's a blend. Compass and EXP have some of that blend. Where, and he said, that's sort of the Charles Schwab model. If you, how much advice do you want? Well, you can get it, but you don't have to have it. Or you've got the traditional model where you drive around, look at 16 houses. And so consumers have those choices. Likewise for closing, one of the things which, we hear and have heard for the last few years, there's always some hot thing that is going to completely and dramatically change the title and settlement industry. Blockchain was going to do everything, including toast bread and butter it and feed it to us. Blockchain has returned as to what it functionally does as an archival system at this point. But, blockchain was going to end the title insurance industry as we know it, 3 years ago, and didn't happen. Just as COVID was starting, remote online notary was really starting to get traction. Texas had passed their law in 19, which I think is sort of a model for a lot of other states. And there's certainly demand for remote online notarization, but it wasn't this tidal wave of demand that some people thought it was going to be, even with COVID, where people didn't want to do it. And it boiled down in many places, particularly here in the Midwest, to what I call the sonic drive-in business model, where you come in your car and then you text or call or let people know you're sitting in the car, and then people come out to you with the documents and you sign the documents. And I don't do them on roller skates, but I probably could have, and then off you go. It's but Ron didn't overwhelmingly change things. We will see Ron continue to grow. Also, too, Ron wasn't as simple, I think, as a lot of people presumed it to be. And there's very good reasons why it's not as simple, for security reasons that need to go on in regard to remote online notary. But, that was going to be, we're going to change everything and we're going to have 50% of our loans closed via Ron. In the attorney states, I can tell you, and I've been to practice in Kentucky just for one, the attorneys were all up in arms like, oh my Lord, this is the end of civilization as we know it. And it's not the case. But consumers want that. They may want a Ron transaction, be willing to pay for it, for any additional charges that come into play. They've got the technology to do it. They may want to have some blend, just electronic closing, where a notary may come to them, but it's all electronic documents. And then it may be traditional, where there's still some paper. And part of that has to do with the lenders and how the lenders are prepared to do this. I think we'll see more and more lenders, even community lenders, credit unions and such, able to do fully electronic transactions. I think into 2022, we're going to see more and more trend in that direction, even from smaller lenders, because they can't afford to do it the old way. And there's no reason to do it the old way. And consumers don't want it. It's like, really, I got to drive across town at 4:00 in the afternoon to sign documents to refinance my house. I just bought a car online that cost more than what I'm refinancing for. It's like, why do I have to do this? And it's not just, everybody blames the millennials. It's, it's the millennials, it's like, you can't trust them any further, you can throw them. But it's people who are 75, 80 years old. And it's like, I don't want to drive over there. I don't want to drive, if you're in a major metro area, if you're in Chicago or DC, to drive across town at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Friday, take your life in your hands, and it's going to take hours. I don't want it. They want to be able to do it from the comfort of their home. So I think that, we will see we'll see growth there, but quite often it is what is foretold does not occur. But I think the changes in the realty model are going to be very dramatic in 2022 as to how real estate companies are run. And if more and more companies move towards an employee model, that's going to really change how the source of business with real estate agents comes into play. Because under RESPA, not in every state, but under RESPA, an employee can be paid something in regard to a referral to an affiliated entity. Now, the affiliated title agency can't pay the real estate agent for the transaction, but that broker can certainly pay a bonus if they choose to. They've been paying their managers who are employees for years for sale of title, for lending, for home warranty, a whole variety of things. So, it's clearly legal under federal law and under most states. That changes everything. If you're an independent title agent and you're used to getting somebody's business, they're like, well, yeah, but the more I send over to brand X over here, the more money goes into my pocket. So I think that's going to be a challenge. I think also too that something we're going to see in 2022 that's really accelerating and has already begun is that lenders, they are reaching out to do quality assurance in real time in the transaction. And so to be able to do that QA and QC from the time the loan application is taken till the transaction goes to fund and disperse, so the loan is sellable the next day, that is going to grow exponentially, I think, in 2022. And a couple reasons. One is, lenders, the MBA was reporting, I guess in 2018, 2019, it cost lenders about $9,000 to originate a loan. They're clearing $300 or $400 on the actual origination, not the sale, but on the origination. Well, during COVID, that all changed, part of it because of the refi purchase mix. But suddenly now that cost dropped to $7,000, and they were making $2,000 to $3,000 on those transactions. They don't want to go back to that $9,000 and clear $400. They're not going back to that, and that's what this enables them to do. For the title and settlement world, the good news is, and we've all experienced, and I used to experience it for years, 6 weeks after you close, the lender comes back and says, well, this document, the guy didn't sign it the right way. Can you go find him and have him sign what is probably a disclosure? It's not even a legal document. Can you go get him to sign that? Well, that sucks the profit right out of a title file, out of a settlement file. And if it's the seller you got to find, good luck. They probably moved to Manila, and you're never going to find it. And I think that's, that starts to go away because they've QC'd that loan. And so you don't hear from people 6 weeks later. That loan has been sold. It's gone.
And then, as we wrap up, we always like to ask people, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited about your job?
Well, coffee gets me out of bed. Let's get
honest.
Yeah, but I think that, the thing about this industry that's great are the people who are in the industry. And the people who are in the title and settlement industry are always looking for innovative ways to do things. There's always somebody. It may not be the whole group in a given marketplace, but there's always somebody who is like, well, I think we can do it better. I think we can do it a better way with a better customer experience and better consumer experience. And I think that that's the one thing about this industry is that, and it's been true every place I've worked, it's great people. And it's people who care about other people. They don't always get the recognition for it, but they do care, and they care about getting people into homes. And I think it's a very virtuous industry. We don't play up that end of it quite so much, and of course it's a very critical industry because we assure people that they are getting clear title. And as the Latin American economist Fernando de Soto says, the clear and free alienation of real estate is the basis of the wealth of the United States. Well, that's what we do. We ensure that it's a clear title. And you only have to talk to people from other countries. Again, we have listeners in India, and I have talked to people in India. To buy a piece of commercial property in India takes a year and a half.
Oh,
And major problems are the title, because you
yeah.
can't get insurance in regard to it. And India has essentially, the same type of legal system we have. So, it's a huge thing that we help people close on houses every day.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, where can people find you, Chuck?
Where they can find me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm here in Cincinnati when I'm not on the road. Probably a common place is to find me at Concourse B at the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. But you can find me at Charles.Cain, that's CAIN, at FNF.com. And I do give out my phone number. It's 513-543-4545. That number started as a car phone in 1983. And again, 513-543-4545. But Charles.Cain at FNF.com if there's anything I can do to assist them, because that's my job, is to assist our title agents from all around the United States.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone who's listened today. And we hope we look forward to seeing you next week.
Great. Thank you.
My pleasure.